Welcome to the Mayo Clinic Moms Podcast. We're having candid conversations and answering difficult questions about pregnancy, raising kids, and everything mom-related. I'm Dr. Angela Mackey, and I'm a mom of two and a pediatrician at Mayo Clinic Children's Center in Rochester, Minnesota. And my co-host is Dr. Nipunie Rajapakse, who's a pediatric infectious disease doctor, also at Mayo Clinic, and is also pregnant. Welcome to the Mayo Clinic Moms Talking Pregnancy Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Mackey, and we have a special episode for you. Last time we talked with my co-host, Dr. Nipunie Rajapakse, she was still pregnant. And today we'll meet her daughter, discuss her delivery story, and review the joys and challenges of raising an infant. Nipunie, I'm so excited. Who do you have with us here today?
So I brought baby Isla with us today. She's 6 months old now. Kind of hard to believe the time has gone by so fast.
It's insane. I feel like we just talked about your pregnancy and anticipating your delivery.
Yeah. She's here and she's great. She's been lots of fun. Some challenges, but mostly fun for the last few months.
Yeah, absolutely. So she's 6 months old now?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. What kind of new things is she learning to do?
So lots of new things. We have lots of smiles and laughing. She might do some of that today. We'll see. She is sitting up really well. She's pretty social. Yeah. We started solids this last couple weeks. We've had a couple of hiccups there. Mm-hmm. And she's transitioning to a crib in our room now. So that's been also a little bit of a challenge, but she's doing pretty well so far.
Is she sleeping?
She sleeps. We've been really lucky, I have to say. I know before we were talking about sleep and all of those things and all of my anxieties about whether she would sleep or not. And I would say for the first 4 months, so just before I came back to work, she actually was a really good sleeper.
But as soon as you came back to work?
As soon as I came back to work, that changed a little bit, but I really can't complain too much. She wakes up in the night a couple times, but she settles pretty easily.
She's so calm, and she's just like astutely checking everything out in the room and just feeling all those textures.
Yeah, she's new environments I think she likes. She's we've been pretty much at home quite a bit because of COVID and other things, and so any new environment that she's in, she's pretty interested in.
She's not too shy though.
No,
she's doing really well.
She started to get a little bit of the stranger anxiety now, but she warms up once she's been around someone for a while.
You like new faces. Yes, you do.
Say hi? Yeah.
Well, Miss Isla, thank you so much for joining us today. I understand you have an appointment with a nap. Yeah. Are you going to go home with Daddy now?
You say bye-bye?
Bye-bye. We're going to hear all about you and how you came into the world. Okay, Nipunie, I really would love to hear your delivery story. And I know that everybody's delivery story can be like a little fraught with unexpected things. So hopefully nothing like that happened in your situation.
Yeah, so we had some expected things and some unexpected things come up, which I think is probably the case in a lot of situations. For us, I'll say we were somewhat fortunate. So I had a planned C-section, so I actually had a sense of when the things were going to happen and a bit of a ability to kind of plan for how things would go and think a bit in advance about how things would go. So I think that kind of helped to relieve some of my anxieties about delivering. She was born in December. December 7th was her birthday, and so this is winter in Minnesota. So of course there was a big snowstorm the morning that we were supposed to come into the hospital. So that was interesting. But we made it there on time. And really the process from there was relatively straightforward. Everyone, I would say the staff was really great at kind of telling us what was going on and what to expect next, which really helped a lot. And so we got all checked in and got our room, and they gave Thomas the stuff that he could wear in the operating room. And so things mostly kind of were as expected. I think for me, probably the hardest part of it was the initial time in the operating room. So he wasn't there with me for the initial part with anesthesia and getting the spinal anesthesia as well. And so that part was a little bit challenging, but again, the staff were kind of great at really explaining what was going on, which I really appreciated. And so once I was all ready and set for the obstetrician to start the procedure, then they allowed him to come in, which was nice, that he could be there with me for that. And really, I think one of the surprising things for me was just how quickly from when they started to when she was actually delivered. He had his camera going pretty much the whole time, and it was like 7 minutes from when
from
they started
to
when she came out. So that part went really fast, and thankfully getting her out was uncomplicated. One of the reasons I had the C-section was because of concerns about fibroid, which is kind of a benign mass on my uterus that could have potentially complicated a vaginal delivery. So we decided that we would just go the C-section route. But one of the unexpected things that happened was when they actually saw the mass intraoperatively, they thought it looked kind of atypical or unusual for a fibroid. And so from there, things got a little bit more complicated because they ended up calling an emergency gynae surgery consult. So another surgeon came into the OR.
Did you know what was going on at the time?
Yeah, they kind of explained it. And so there was a lot of kind of discussion about whether to remove this thing or just to do a biopsy. And eventually they decided to just biopsy it because they felt that removing it would be kind of risky from a bleeding perspective. And so they did that, and then so I think the whole procedure itself took longer than a usual C-section. And of course, during all that time, I really wanted to see her.
Had you seen her yet?
They had showed me her kind of up over the drapes, and then they did eventually bring her back and put her on my chest. So I call that Simba
moment, when they hold the baby up over and show it to the mom and stuff like that.
The song to go off in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and then they did eventually bring her over, and she was able to lay on my chest while they were doing all the other stuff as well. So it was a bit of a nerve-wracking couple of weeks waiting for the pathology results on the biopsy, but thankfully everything came back as nothing really to be too concerned about. So that all went okay. And then recovery-wise, I think I kind of had an idea of what to expect, but I've never had a major abdominal surgery before. And so there was obviously some pain associated with that. I think probably kind of what to be expected. Some challenges kind of just getting up and moving around afterwards was kind of uncomfortable. And then on top of that, trying to breastfeed a baby and maneuver a new baby around was a bit challenging as well. But I think overall our hospital stay was reasonably uncomplicated. We had kind of the usual kind of newborn screening tests for Isla. Thankfully, all of those went well. She had one blood test, or when they did the actually screening test for jaundice, she flagged as potentially being high, so she had to get a blood test for that. But otherwise, I think everything else went pretty smoothly in hospital. I think one of the things maybe that I didn't anticipate was just how difficult the breastfeeding was going to be. I think I knew that it would be a challenge, but for something that people kind of say is natural, it really took a lot of effort.
You just put the baby to the breast and it just magically happens.
To make it happen. Yeah, so a steep learning curve for me and a steep learning curve for her as well, to kind of figure out it really is like a skill. Like you need to practice it, and when you're like in pain and in hospital, it's not kind of the easiest setting to practice in. I think maybe one of the things I would have done differently is we were mostly trying to breastfeed while I was in bed, and I found once I got home and was in a chair, it's a lot
way easier. The latch is a lot deeper if you're not bent over like that. Yeah, absolutely.
And so it was a struggle in hospital for us, but thankfully she didn't lose too much weight, and I was very thankful for Thomas's support with breastfeeding, because on the second day, like, her little lips were looking dry, and I was ready to just say give her the formula, and he encouraged me to keep going. And so we kind of got over that hump, and she thankfully was a pretty good feeder once she got the hang of it.
Days 2 and 3 are the hardest for breastfeeding. Yeah, absolutely, because you're so tired, you're in pain. They're not very good at it.
Exactly.
They get sleepy. I have 2 questions. One, how did Thomas do during the delivery?
He was good.
Okay, he didn't pass out?
No, I know. I was worried because he doesn't work in medicine, and he hasn't really spent a lot of time in a hospital setting, has never been in an operating room. And so I was kind of more worried about him than I was for myself. But he was fantastic. Yeah, he didn't pass out. He caught the whole thing. He was super excited to be able to be there and see it.
Okay, second question. You talked about recovering from the C-section and the pain. What tips would you give moms, things that, like little things that helped you that they can use?
So there was a few things. So first of all, I would say don't get behind on your pain medication. And I know I was like, oh yeah, I can keep track of every 3 hours alternating Tylenol or ibuprofen and acetaminophen. But unless you write it down, you're going to forget because you're also trying to remember when baby fed last and feeding them.
And which breast you just fed on.
Exactly. There's so many different things to keep track of. And so I was lucky to have my sister here actually around the time of the delivery. And she had like written down a MAR, like a medication administration record for me.
Is she in medicine too?
Yes, she's
I love that.
Pediatric neurologist.
Okay, there you go.
She was checking off and reminding me every 3 hours to take something because I could tell when I missed a dose or something. It was really quite painful for those first few days. So I'd say definitely stay on top of your pain medication. I found one of the belly binders to be really helpful post C-section, just in terms of providing some additional support. So contrary to what you see on TV, you don't just snap back to having a belly like you did before you were pregnant, right after baby's born. I think they say your abdomen is kind of like 4 to 5 months of pregnancy. And so having that kind of pressure on the C-section area was quite painful. And so having a belly binder I found really helpful. The other thing I found really helpful was she slept in a bassinet next to our bed, and getting one that had the side that kind of could pull down so I wouldn't have to fully sit up to get her out of it. That was kind of a big game changer for us as well. So it was much easier for me to maneuver and get her in and out to feed her. So those things were really helpful kind of in the immediate recovery period for me. Yeah.
We talked in our previous episodes about there's so many things that you kind of don't know what to expect. You know that things are going to be different or challenging and stuff, but what surprised you most about delivery and that postpartum period?
So I think probably the biggest surprise to me, even though I kind of knew it, was the breastfeeding, kind of how challenging that would be, how much practice that would take for us to get the hang of it. I think the other thing that surprised me was just kind of how much of the normal newborn things I didn't know, like the best way to give her a bath, like what temperature should the water be. Like there's things we were.
They don't teach that in residency.
No, exactly. There was things we were Googling, and thank goodness for Google because I don't know how parents did it before. There's so many just random things that I've looked up and been able to find online. But yeah, those kinds of normal baby things were a bit surprising. I figured I would probably know more of those or have gathered them along the way training in pediatrics. And then the other kind of, I guess, personally nice surprise was kind of just how well Thomas kind of adjusted to her being around and how helpful he was and how supportive he was as a partner. I think that was really kind of critical in our first few months now, with just how much work it is taking care of a baby. To have a supportive partner has really been a game changer for me in terms of being able to come back to work and things like that. So that was kind of another. I knew he would be great, but it was a nice surprise to see just how well they've bonded, and she just adores him. So yeah, that's been fantastic.
Are you thinking about getting pregnant, or maybe you're a current mom-to-be, or you're like myself and you're in the midst of raising kids and you're looking for practical, evidence-based advice from Mayo Clinic experts? Mayo Clinic Press has got you covered. We have a series of 4 books starting from Fertility and Conception to Guide to a Healthy Pregnancy, Guide to Your Baby's First Years, and the last book in this series, the one I was the medical editor of, Guide to Raising a Healthy Child. You can find these amazing books from Mayo Clinic Press wherever books are sold or on the Mayo Clinic Press website. Could you imagine having twins or triplets or multiples now that you have one?
Yes.
Just knowing how hard it is to care for one little tiny human being.
We have had that conversation, and I was like, I don't know. First of all, how single parents do it. I think it's like super difficult to do everything on your own. But also to have multiple babies at once. I guess you just kind of make it through, but yeah.
Hats off to all those parents.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's been the biggest challenge about being a parent?
So
there might not be one, but
there's
probably more than one.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's hard to pick the biggest out of all of them. I would say returning to work has been a challenge. So I took 4 months off for maternity leave after she was born, which I think is kind of considered a long time in the United States. In other countries, in Canada where I grew up, it was pretty short. And so making that adjustment was challenging. I think trying to get over that mom guilt of being at work when she's at home. I mean, we're fortunate. Thomas works from home, and he's been taking care of her at home, which has been really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that I can't be there with them has been a bit of an adjustment for me. And then just trying to juggle baby things with work things. Like at the end of the day, like I just want to get home and be with them, but there's always charts and paperwork and stuff that need to be done. And then things that maybe I didn't really think of that much, like meeting times. Like, so we have 7:30 in the morning meetings, not infrequently, and just how challenging it is to get her up, get her fed, make sure that she's okay before going to a meeting or something like that, I think can be hard. And then I have done now 2 weeks of call at the hospital since she was born.
Your calls are busy too.
Yeah, our calls are busy. And at first I was like, what do I do with my pager? Because I don't want the pager waking her up in the middle of the night, and all of these things kind of logistically had to figure out.
The 1980s technology that we still have.
Yes, we still have pagers. And so those are all kind of things that I hadn't really put much thought into before, to be honest, but we've had to try and figure out now.
What about, like, you're still breastfeeding and nursing? That, I think, was also just an added challenge, I think, for me, of trying to fit it in during the day. And, and then the work doesn't go away when you have to pump, so it just adds up.
Exactly.
And how did you find that you've been able to kind of manage that?
To fit it in, It can be really challenging because, for example, like in clinic, sometimes patients show up late or things like that, and so even if I have kind of tried to set aside some time to pump, things happen. Right. You get a page, you have to talk to the nurses or something like that, and you get off schedule there. And so trying to fit in something that I wasn't doing before that has to happen every 3 hours during the day, on top of seeing patients and doing other things, is challenging for sure. And just all the equipment that it takes. So the other misconception about breastfeeding or trying to give your child breast milk is that it's free, and I can say it certainly is not.
Nope.
There's so many different pumping parts and accessories and things that I have to bring. I've already made the mistake of leaving stuff at home and having to improvise at work. You have to be able to store the milk safely, keep it cold at work, and then even transporting it back and forth and things like that are challenging. And so, it's been kind of a juggling act. I think I'm finally, only now, 2 months after getting back to work, getting into a bit of a routine. But it's a lot. I think I really wanted, it was important to me to breastfeed, and so we've kept it up. Also with the formula shortages and all of those other issues, it's been kind of additional motivation to try and keep it up. But I have my eye on that 1 year mark because it's definitely a lot of extra work.
Yeah. Kudos to you. I definitely, with each of my children, forgot my pump at least once. And the nice thing about Mayo Clinic is there's a lot of these wonderful pumps all around, but you have to have an adapter. And I remember like running down to the store to buy the adapter. So I ended up having like 2 or 3 sets of these adapters by the time I finished pumping and passed them on to somebody else at some point. But
I know.
Yeah, but you're just stranded. You're like, I have to pump. I can't go home. I can't do this. What am I going to do? So
I know. And the washing of the pump parts is like the other thing. I feel like
the bane of my
half
existence
of my life
is spent cleaning
and washing all of that stuff. Yeah.
So a huge plug for longer maternity leave so that women can just breastfeed and not have to provide express breast milk for their babies.
I know. You asked kind of what was surprising. I think having not really looked at maternity leave policies and supports that are provided to new parents in this country before I got pregnant, that was a surprise to me. I think it's really very unfortunate that there's not paid parental leave for families that work.
And
makes it really challenging.
I think directly one of the reasons why breastfeeding rates are probably lower in our country compared to other countries, because it's really hard to continue to do while maintaining a full-time job. So.
For sure.
I remember one of my mentors, I came to work for an early 7 a.m. meeting, and I come in with like all these bags, and you came in today with all these bags, right? You got your pumping bag, you got your work bag, you got your bag for the milk, and like 25 other bags. And she goes, wow, how many people did you feed today? Because it just felt such a great acknowledgement of like, yes, I am feeding multiple human beings and myself and doing a job, you know? So it's a lot of work. So congratulations. It's really hard. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thanks.
You know, one of the episodes before, we talked about all the things that we get for babies.
Yes.
Right? And then sometimes the things that you don't register for. So I'm curious to know, what did you find that you didn't think you were going to use that's been really useful?
Yeah.
Is there anything specific?
There's a couple of things that come to mind, and one of them is kind of small. Actually, we had Isla here before, and I don't know if you could see it, but she had like a scratch on her forehead where she scratched herself, and I did not realize how quickly babies' nails grow and how often you have to trim them, and I was kind of terrified of using the little clippers. And so we got like one of these little baby electric, it's like a nail file that does it, and it doesn't do anything if it touches their skin, and that thing we use like every other day for her because her nails grow so fast.
That's brilliant. I just use an old school nail file. Yeah. I wish I would have had that.
So yeah, it's super quick because they don't like to sit still for very long too, right? So we have to like do it quickly when she's distracted by something else. So that is like one little thing that we got that we're like using multiple times a week.
I'm sure,
and has worked really well. The other thing that we got that I wasn't really sure if I would use it was we kind of set up like a baby command station in our living room in a play yard, which has a changing surface on it. So we have kind of everything in one place, and that has made it really easy.
It's like the only place you change her.
Yeah. And we have like all of her, we have got like a dresser for her nursery and all this stuff, but all of her clothes are in there, all of her like lotions and ointments and everything for her.
Because that's where you live, so it makes sense to just have it. Yeah.
So not having to like go to the bedroom or nursery to do all of that stuff has made things a lot easier. Those are probably two of the things that we use the most that I wasn't really sure. One thing that I probably didn't appreciate before she had come was how important and how nice it is to have somewhere safe to kind of put her down when I need to do something with my hands. So some of the little like bouncy chair things have been really great, or even just to put her in if I have to take a shower.
Those are
just
clutch.
Put her outside the shower. I can see her and get a shower in, and so that's been really nice to have. Yeah.
Did you register for anything that you thought you were going to use and you like haven't even taken it out of the box yet?
Yeah. So talking about bouncy chairs, so we had actually bought one of the like super fancy ones that are on the market. They're like really expensive and they move in like 15 different directions.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Make a whole bunch of sounds and things. I didn't end up taking it out of the box. We sent that back because she was perfectly happy in the little one we can just push with our foot.
It's more mobile.
Exactly. It's a lot lighter. It's easier. I can move it into the bathroom and to the shower. So that one we didn't take out of the box. We sent that back. The other thing I had gotten was one of these really fancy baby monitors, because I thought that I would like to have the baby monitor on my phone, but I realized that I couldn't really use my phone if I wanted to see what was going on with her. And so we got another monitor. It was less than like half the price, but it has video and sound and a separate screen on it, and I really preferred that. So those were kind of two things that we spent quite a bit of money on and didn't use and ended up returning. So.
Those separate monitors where you just want to intermittently look on them are good when they're like older, like my kid's age. Yeah. When you're like, are they sleeping or are they reading a book or are they playing Legos or something later at night? Exactly. But I agree, that separate thing is nice because it just, you can just take it with you and it's on all the time. So,
exactly. Yeah. So those were a couple of them.
So she's 6 months old. This is like the most invasive question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because you told me it was okay. But do you think that you'll have another one? I know, I think the worst time to ask somebody is right now when you are so tired and exhausted and you haven't slept for 6 months. Yeah. But yeah, do you think there'll be another baby sometime?
We do. We do want her to have a sibling. And so in terms of kind of the timing of that, it's something that we did talk to our OB about, and they recommended with a C-section, ideally at least 18 months between deliveries. Okay. And so we're going to wait until kind of that point. But yes, we do plan to have a second one. Honestly, right now, though, it seems overwhelming just to think of two, because one is 100% of our attention and time. But I know people manage to have more than one child and survive. So
Yes.
That'll be a whole new juggling act, I'm sure. But
Right. Chaos. It's chaos.
yeah.
Speaking of this, Mayo Clinic Press is busy working on a new podcast called Toddler Plus Baby Embracing the Chaos that's going to address exactly this. How on earth you add another child to this mix? Nipunie, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your pregnancy story and sharing your daughter with us. It was just beautiful to hear everything that you've been through with your daughter and your family and with Thomas.
Great. Thanks for having me. It was great. I'm glad you got to meet Isla as well.
Thanks everyone for joining today. Make sure you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes by subscribing and following along on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoyed this episode and you want other moms out there to hear this valuable information, make sure that you leave a review wherever you listen. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.